if you watch all these podcasts and know all of this knowledge and someone's talking to you and you say, yeah, I know, but you don't do it, you're essentially lying to yourself and you're breaking that relationship with yourself. It's the opposite of loving yourself. And so after a while, if you ingest all of this info and the action doesn't equate to the things that you're ingesting, those are lots of mini lies that get built up over time. And what that I believe does is it dampens the intuition that you can have of the things that you truly do want and the
Mhm.
energy and life force you do want to bring into the world.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to ALLSMITH, where we delve into the stories of individuals who redefine human potential. Today, I'm so honored to host Mike Aidala. He's such a special human. He's a world record holding athlete, a performance coach, and the founder of the Offense, which is a physical culture club. From setting a Guinness World Record with a 255-pound Turkish getup. And if you guys haven't seen that on Instagram, shoot me a DM because I got to send that video to you guys. It's incredible. But from that world record to completing over 15 ultra marathons, this dude, Mike, he exemplifies the synergy of physical prowess and the mental resilience. Join us as we explore this incredible journey from collegiate football to holistic coaching and discover the philosophies that drive his commitment to empowering others. Mike, you freaking legend, man. Welcome to the show, dude.
Man, what an intro. Thanks so much for having me, Bryce. I'm pumped to be here.
I'm pumped to connect with you. And what's so beautiful, and we talked about it briefly offline, is just like you're not this all gas, no brakes performance athlete. Like you have feelings, you have emotions, you understand mental health, you understand mental resilience. And I'm stoked to have you as a part of ALLSMITH because we connected a few months back, but it's like now in following your journey a little bit deeper, it's like this is freaking dope. Now I have a little bit more of a peek behind the curtain. And after that 255 Turkish get up, I'm just like, let's go. Let's get my boy on the show. Let's talk about this.
Yeah, thanks, man. Yeah, I'm pumped about it. It was a really fun day for sure.
So special. And you had so many fans and friends out there. Like, before we delve into your story, dude, like what was that experience like? A 255-pound Turkish get up. And maybe for people that don't know what that movement is, let's describe that movement and let's discuss kind of what that means to go through the experience of like a world record performance.
Yeah. Okay, I'll describe the movement first. So you imagine you're laying on your back. You need to get a weight extended over you with one hand. So like a single arm dumbbell press, like
Mm-hmm.
whatever weight that is, kettlebell. I used a axle bar, barbell. And then you have to stand up. So you have to crunch up onto the elbow, come up onto your hand, get to a lunge position, and then lunge up and then reverse it all the way back down. And for the official Guinness record, you had to show control throughout the entire movement. So you had to lay all the way back down onto your back and pause for a moment with that arm extended before you put the bar down. And I mean, it was amazing, dude. I'll be honest with you, like it was one of the best days of my life. Like it was so fun being able to lift a PR, which, as a guy who's been in the gym since I'm 14 years old, those are amazing days. But
Yeah,
then to
the
do it,
PRs are few and far between as you get a little bit older and a little bit more aged in the gym culture.
totally, yeah. I mean, and then to do it in front of over 100 friends, family, community members, like that was pretty special. I've done a Turkish get up record before. It was the most weight accumulated in an hour. And
Okay.
so that was a different type of experience because this is the one I did now is really personal. It's like, the get up might take a minute at the most. And then there's rest time before that. And so there's kind of a little bit time to like interact with with like your friends or the fans or whatever. And think about what you're going to attempt next. And so there's a lot kind of we can dive into there, if you're interested in all of that. But that day was pretty cool to do something, highly technical, obviously required a lot of skill, with people like 10 feet away from you.
Mm-hmm. I love the way you describe that, man. And also just understanding that, like, there's a process that goes into this. It's not just like you do the world record attempt. It's like, oh, wow, there's understanding of scapular stability. There's single arm pressing strength. There's midline resilience. There's stacking things as far as like a handstand component, bicep by the ear, and understanding how to create the optimal shapes in relation to, the overhead squat, in relation to the single arm overhead lunge. And just understanding that, like, there's bits and there's pieces and there's things that go into this process. It's not just like you showed up one day and you're like, hey, I can squat a lot, I can press a lot, and I'm gonna go do the thing. And I think that's what later Jose, that's something that jumps into, my psychology, is the fact that, like, your patience, your resilience, but also your willingness to buy into the culture of understanding that, like, hey, if I'm going to set a world record, here are the prerequisites that go into this. And if I were to zoom out and press pause for a humble moment, Mike, you know this better than anybody. The Rocky scene that's shown to everybody is 30 fucking seconds, dude. But what goes into Rocky becoming Rocky is 5+ years. Like, who you are as a man after these ultras, after the adversities and the peaks and valleys of what you've gone through, all those things have to synergize into an emotional outlet for you psychologically when you're performing this world record piece of, like, hey, the world sees this, like you said, minute or less of a single arm Turkish get up with 255 pounds, but they don't see all the other sacrifices that went into it. When you pause and you reflect on the journey of the strength development, the scapular stability, all the physical, mental, and emotional prerequisites that went into that moment, what comes to mind, man?
To be honest, that one, it's those things are really fun for me. Like I
Mhm.
like pushing my body and I'm really curious on what it can do. And so something like a Turkish get up, when I first saw the record, it was 177 pounds. And then I
So you
knew I could beat
smashed
that.
that world record.
Yeah, I mean, I knew a lot of people could actually beat it then. And so I was
Yeah.
like, okay, let's kind of see what happens. Then around Christmas time last year, like a little bit before, like beginning of December, it went up to 200 pounds. And
Mhm.
so then I was like, okay, let me maybe think about if I want to go after this. And it was fun to kind of break down the whole lift and what needs to get strength in order to do that. And I'll talk about that in a second. But what really resonated with me when you were talking about all of the things that go into it beforehand was when I would line up at 100-mile ultra marathon race, because you're in that start line in the middle of the morning, probably it's dark. You're surrounded by, depending on what race it is, hundreds of people that have committed mornings, evenings. They sacrifice so much to be at that one spot and on that race, and the gun is about to go off. Like they're
Mhm.
tapered, they're ready. Like that energy is the most palpable that I've ever experienced with something athletic because of the commitment and the support with their friends and family who woke up at 4 a.m. to be there and are going to be with them for the next, 15 to 40 hours, depending on the race. Like that is a cool moment where I have definitely paused and reflected, like, whoa, this is awesome. And then for the get up record, like a lot of that is work I'm still doing now, like trying to let that sink in as much as possible. It was a little over a month ago. And so like really allowing myself to be proud of it and not trying to rush on to, the next thing or something else, but you know, yeah, just let it all soak in.
Per our last conversation, and if people haven't listened to it, Mike and I had an amazing podcast, what, like 5 or 6 months ago, where we
Mm-hmm.
unpacked, some of your story into how you found high level athletics, how you found performance culture, but more importantly, like, you do this because you're trying to be an awesome man. And I don't know, man, I'm a huge believer that writing fills the gaps within our thinking. And so I sit there with pen and paper early in the morning and I try my best to, like, create ideas in and around my headspace. And something that's come to mind for me in relation to you is just true strength is revealed not in what you can lift, but in what you're willing to really let go of. And I think that, like, I mean, I can see your body language, your eyes get a little itch because you're like, oh, I know how I created space for some of these physical endeavors that I'm at now, but it didn't always come that easy. And so, Mike, my question for you is, what's something you had to really understand how to release in order to become the man that you are today?
So many things, man. Like so many beliefs about myself and what I'm capable of, or what I can do. Um, One specific one was I was diagnosed with a sleeping disorder when I was really young, and I
Mm,
was told that my body needs 12 to 13 hours a night to recover,
jeez,
compared to
the
the
traditional
normal
8 hours.
7 to 9 hours. And so for 10 years, I was like, I'm never going to be successful. I'm never going to be someone that can succeed in life because I have this disadvantage of
Mhm,
needing to sleep so much. And um, after those 10 years, I kind of wanted to quit that story. I wanted to release it. And so I started learning about holistic health and different diets and elimination diets. And when
mm,
I eliminated certain foods, specifically gluten, this was maybe 12, 15 years ago, all of a sudden I didn't get so tired. I didn't need as much sleep. And
mhm.
so I was able to get off a medication that I was on for 10 years. And that was
That's
probably the
incredible.
first like major investment in myself that led to many other preconceived stories being able to be released. Another one is running. Like I got into long distance ultra running 3 years ago and was not very good, and it's still not a great runner. But the perception of how I perceived a great runner um, is what allowed me to keep going, because I just wanted to be better than I was the day before, right? Super kind of cliche, but it really was impactful for me to just improve a little bit and focus on my own improvement versus comparing myself to, the Eric Hinmans of the world who are running, you know,
They put in the time, energy, and attention to maximize their human potential within the endurance side of things. But it's like you have multiple goals, dude. Like you went from Leadville on the bike to Leadville and running. You were hanging out with our good friend Ty Morris, who ran the Leadville 100 in less than 24 hours, which is fucking insane. And like he's my boy because he's a former basketball guy, so I got to give him a quick little shout out. But it's like, dude, then transitioning and transforming your body and your headspace into doing a really big strength feat. And it wasn't like you were just beating the previous record of 177 pounds by, a couple pounds. You demolished it by over fucking 100 pounds almost. And it's like, Mike, where do these ideas come from? Like, how do you stretch your headspace and your bandwidth to want to participate in these things when you're like, you're trying to run the offense, you're trying to be a significant other, you have a father role now. You're also trying to have a personal life with your, beautiful Denver fitness crew and be a part of Muscle Mountain and all the supplements and sleep and adventure and all the things. How do you find time for this, man? Like for the local entrepreneur that's just like, hey, I'm trying to perform well, trying to keep my sex drive and like, my human potential high and my thought process and my like, I want to mitigate brain fog. And then simultaneously, you're trying to build businesses, not just in person, but online. I mean, last time we spoke, you were getting deliverables from Edge, trying to get cold plunges for a retreat that you were going to host. Like you're inevitably doing lots of things at once. So for like the traditional high performer that's between the ages of like 30 and 45, that's like trying to be an awesome man, trying to monetize, trying to be a provider, trying to be a protector, but also trying to have fun, trying to take care of themselves and like find ways to invest and like check the box and all these different things. How the fuck are you able to do this, man? Like I'm over here, like I don't even care that we press the record button. Like I'm actually just like, how do I be more like Mike Aidala?
well, I would encourage people to be and I always say this, I want everyone to be the best version of themselves and do the
Mhm.
things that bring them the most joy. And
Mm-hmm.
so this is a conversation I have often with folks with my coaching company, The Offense. We do a lot of
Mm-hmm.
mindset coaching, and they'll come in with what I would call a lot of these shoulds. I should invest. I should have better body. I should have better relationship. I should make more money. I should whatever. And one of the first things I do is help them eliminate the shoulds and get clear on what it is that they want and what they value. And
Mm.
so once you know, and I'm happy to discuss this. I can't remember if we talked about it on the last podcast, but like a way to define your values based on your actions,
Mm-hmm.
then everything else gets eliminated from your life. Things like mindless scrolling, TV, maybe drugs or alcohol, like anything that's not on your activity values list gets limited, and you have a lot of time to then do all of those things that are really enjoyable for you.
That's cool. How do you start that conversation? Like, how do you create like a data entry where you collect inputs, right, from your new client, and then you kind of assess that? You create this psychological roadmap of like, here's what they want, here's what they came in with. How do we create a process and procedures and standard operating procedures, the SOPs, to kind of maneuver them in the right direction based on the data you have and the data that you think they need?
Mhm. I almost like I don't necessarily know what people need. Like I don't my coaching's not telling people what to do. It's helping create that framework. And so I can give um the values framework that'll help people with, and it's called a deathbed values,
Mm-hmm.
where I want everyone listening now to imagine themselves, 100 years from now, on their deathbed, and they're surrounded by their friends, family, everyone that loves them and cares about them, great grandkids, everyone there. And you're reflecting back on your life, and you've lived an amazing life from this moment on. After listening to this podcast, your life is perfect. Now, you wouldn't change anything, no regrets. What are the different activities that you spent your time doing?
Mm.
Then, when you have those activities, put them into various buckets. Two very common ones would be health and wellness and quality time with friends and family. So anything that's related to health and wellness goes into that bucket. Anything related to quality time with friends and family. And I often have people try to get between like 4 and 6 of these buckets. And then I have them think about the pat, or I'll give you my five just as a framework. More than happy to use these two. They're not like steal them. Friends and quality time, friends and family, health and wellness, business and the impact that can create, peak experiences or flow states,
Mm-hmm.
senses of awe. This would be like travel, or you're on the top of the mountain and you're looking out and you're like, wow, this life is amazing. Um, and then learning new things. So those are my five. And ideally, everything else in my life that doesn't fit into those five buckets gets eliminated because it's not something that I care about. And if people are struggling with just like self esteem or confidence, they probably spend a lot of hours outside of their buckets.
Mm-hmm.
And so, your practical question, the action item, is looking at their schedule and seeing how much time daily are you spending outside of the things that you value. And then what can we start eliminating? And, a common one, I mean, probably help people take like 20, 30 TVs off the wall because no one says, I'm so happy I sat and binged on all of these TV shows
Mm-hmm.
when they're on their deathbed. And so, why is the TV in the house? Because if it's there and you don't sure what you really are wanting to do after dinner before bed, it can be easy to just like go into that autopilot. And the more we can eliminate that autopilot and have you take the actions that are truly meaningful to you, that's what really helps people live a life that they are intrinsically proud of and don't necessarily even care what other people think about it.
I love the way you describe that, Mike, because you look at what most people are chasing with a TV, myself included. It's an altered state of consciousness. It's, hey, I'm in all this stress over here, and I'm trying to get in an optimal state over here. And inevitably, it's like, hey, I want to bury myself in this thing. In some ways, it's addiction. In some ways, it's some sort of psychological manipulation where you're like, hey, I want an altered state of consciousness to just kind of like not think about the things that are like kind of turning up the volume of that stress dial temporarily. And I love your 5 different categories or buckets that you pour your time into. The ones that I think about often that I ruminate on way too much are faith, family, fitness, finances, and fun. I call them the 5 F's.
Mm-hmm.
And those are things that, I definitely think people can add into their toolbox, into their back pocket that, like first and foremost, when it comes to faith, I've recently really dove into my relationship with God, not just like, hey, let me reach out to you, buddy, every time I need something. It's like, no, let's hang out. Let's talk about some things. Like, let's create a relationship. And like, I don't think religion is for everybody. Some people lean in towards more of a spiritual approach and whatnot. But for me, it's like I pause and reflect and I look over my shoulder and I think of confidence and belief as this stack of evidence that I'm like, whoa, too many things have occurred where I got to put some time and energy into this thing to really create a belief system and a value system to realize that like, whoa, the man upstairs has rewarded me and many people in my life in ways that I could never have imagined based on simply being enrolled in the process and trying to do the next right thing. And one of my favorite lines in the history of all human experience is that Ted Lasso quote, which I hope you watch Ted Lasso because
I've
you're not
never
a
seen
TV guy.
it.
Dude, I'm gonna push you towards that one, Mike, because there's a famous scene where he's in a little bit of a chaos and a little bit of a discrepancy within his life, and he goes, "Be more curious than judgmental." And I think that line can inevitably, tangibly, like change the lives of so many different people because we come with preconceived notions. We think based on what we see that perception is reality, so we create a judgment psychologically. It's like pause for a moment. One of my 3 favorite words of all time is seek to understand. Everybody has a story we know absolutely nothing about. And so to assume that their actions are based on your preconceived notions is fucking bullshit. But if you actually sit with and you're like, oh, okay, let me get more curious here. Now we can steer people in the right direction based on having a better, more tangible understanding of what they're going through. That doesn't mean that their vices or their choices are correct, but it means we have a better understanding to then take in those things as data inputs to improve upon the outputs. And I thought you would really, really appreciate that thing. And something that stands out to me too, man, is just you're such a high performer, but that doesn't mean you're addicted to performance. You're actually very patient from my observation. And especially in talking with our really good friend Bickle, our 300-pound cheetah, something that comes to mind is presence is the heaviest weight that most men in the world are avoiding. They avoid lifting presence. They want an altered state of consciousness, whether that's TV, whether that's movement, whether that's lifting heavy things, whether that's providing an experience. And my question for you is what does presence look like in your everyday life? And how do you help cultivate presence within your company, the offense, your friend group, and your circle of people that you interact with every day?
Yeah, I love that, and I do love the Ted Lasso quote too. I've never seen that, but I think curiosity is like the ticket. But
Mhm.
it takes a lot of courage. You have to have a lot of courage to be curious, and then to take action on that curiosity. Um, and something with presence is it's a lot easier to be present about some things that you really care about and are truly important to you. And so that's what I would encourage people to think on is like, if I'm struggling to be present with something, do I really want to be doing the thing that I'm struggling to be present with?
Yeah,
Like,
that's a
it's
really great point.
and if you are struggling with it, then it's probably there's probably some room to make changes to make that easier for you. Like
Mhm.
I talk a lot with clients about this with motivation. If someone's struggling to feel motivated, um, it's they have the wrong goal. I think goal setting is like a really amazing art form. And taking the time to set the right goal will keep you motivated and which will make the discipline a lot easier versus just constantly needing to grind and like stay hard and like focused on whatever it is that you're doing. Obviously, those things are important, but life's hard. And so if we can set the right goals, it helps with motivation and discipline.
Very well said, man. When you think about Leadership. That word it's a big word. It's a scary word. And like you're not just the leader of self, you're the leader of your family, you're the leader of your business. You're the leader in different arenas or different lanes within the human experience. And the thing that's difficult about leadership is that like we can marry ourselves to this ideation that sounds great on a podcast of like, hey, be married to the process, divorced from the outcome, or control the controllables, or all these one liners that sound awesome. But leadership's lonely. You're at the top. Nobody really gets it. You're trying your best to be the visionary, but also the cultivator of energy. You're trying to understand the standard operating procedures and create a rhythm as far as experiential, like actionables. It's not just like speaking in the clouds of like, these are great ideas that we're never going to execute on. And men come to you in a very vulnerable state and they knock on that Mike Aidala door and they say, like, hey, man, how I got from A to B, like, fucking worked. You know, I made good money. I had this great family. I was ripped. I was this high performer. But now I can't get from B to C. I got to figure out this next phase. And something that came to mind, and as far as my reflection, my meditation on you yesterday, was leadership starts with self leadership, being honest, being disciplined, but also being kind and having grace for oneself. What are your non-negotiables when it comes to self leadership, and how does that diffuse into your company, the offense?
Self leadership, like how I lead my life.
Yeah, how you lead your life and the habits, and like we just had Michael Chernow on the show. He's
Cool.
got some like non-negotiables when it comes to morning, midday, and evening routine and things that he's like, hey, it doesn't matter what's going on. I'm not sacrificing that because it
Hmm.
makes me a better man, a better father, and a better business owner. And so
Hmm.
for you, when life gets heavy, when you're attempting to, fit that mold or the ideation of how you view yourself as a leader, what are some of the non-negotiables that you tinker with within the mic,
Hmm.
space?
Yeah. To be honest, I don't have like a crazy strict thing that I'm needing to hold on to.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because I like being emotionally flexible and mentally flexible.
Love that.
So, um, obviously, there's the not obviously like moving my body. If I just sat on the couch all day, it'd be pretty. If after a few days, that'd be pretty difficult for me. So I want to get outside. I want to be in the sun. I want to move. I want to be around people that I like. But a big part of what I'll do with the offense is just distilling things down to simple aspects that people can focus on that cover a lot of different buckets.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and
I call
using
that
that
digestible and repeatable.
just simple, like if you are spending your time doing those only activities in those five buckets, you're probably not going to be struggling with some of these other aspects. Now, what happens is if those other aspects are creeping in, then it's okay, why are those things creeping in? And what adjustments can you make within your friends and family, your health and wellness, your business impact? Maybe you haven't gone away or gone outside for a walk to a different part of the neighborhood or whatever it may be. And so, again, I wish I had some type of like morning routine thing for you down, but I drink water, I drink some coffee, I eat a healthy breakfast, I try to get outside, walk my dog. But if I miss one of those things, it's not like my day's ruined.
Yeah. The thing I like about that, dude, is I want to pull it up here. We wrote about it this morning. Hang on one second. There we go. Something that comes to mind that I was thinking about this morning with you. Are extreme habits the key to discipline, or do they disguise an addiction? And Alex Hormozy talks about this. He goes, hey man, like our country was devised by people no smarter than you and I that smoked cigarettes and ate bacon for breakfast. And it's like, okay, you could categorize that as like a dopamine addiction, but when you pause and you zoom out from that, it's like, okay, I understand, like wake up, hydrate first, get your coffee second, spend 15 to 20 minutes away from your phone, get some natural sunlight into your eyes, similar to what the articulation of Andrew Huberman is to help set your circadian rhythm. Get some deep nasal breathing into your belly, downregulate your nervous system, become a little bit more parasympathetic in relation to this cortisol dump that comes as to why we wake up first thing in the morning in this panic of feeling the need to go solve problems and this, that, and the other. Those things are beautiful. I mean, we can get into red light therapy, we can get into sauna, ice, all the things that are kind of tossed into this like perfect morning routine. Mike, it fucking takes forever. Not everybody's got 2 hours. Some people, our parents, got to get their kids to school. Some people got problems to solve. Some people have just this like, hey, I just got to go all gas, no brakes. And my thought process there is just like, do you have discipline or does discipline have you? Right? Do you become so married to this morning routine that if you don't do it, you have a bad day, you can't execute, you can't think clearly, and all of a sudden you're in these golden handcuffs associated with, trying to check all of these different boxes. And I'm sure you experience this with the health and wellness community out there in Denver, where it's like people have freedom of time. They've created passive income where they can do what they want, when they want, how they want, which is eternal freedom. It's beautiful. But it's like, if you can't start your day without a cold plunge or without some of these things, it's like, dude, you're not flexible or adaptable, as you just mentioned. You're actually a slave. And I'm curious your thoughts, like how much, what's the dosage there? In my opinion, it's about 3 days a week where it's like you hold yourself to the standard. But then it's the other days, it's like, okay, now it's a choice. Now I can go tinker and play with some of these things, or I can move on. I can just like jump up and I can grab my wife or my girlfriend. We can go grab coffee or we can go do something different. I'm not necessarily married to these things where, if I don't do them, I have a horrible day or all of a sudden like my nervous system is dysregulated. What are your thoughts on this?
I'm similar to you. And again, I think we're all a little bit different. So I would never want to tell someone what they should do or shouldn't do. If those things are really valuable to them and important, then that's great. And but I do think building in some flexibility is important. But if there's no problem or there's no need to be flexible on it, then is there an issue? I mean, I do know personally some of my clients that they struggle with that. They have a very strict routine. If things go off, now they're dysregulated. That
Mhm.
shows that there's a problem. But if they
But I
just
want to bookmark you there and kind of challenge that for a second, because it's like, I agree 100%. And you and I both understand like personal, just like reflection, like how am I feeling? But it's like that question is so like subjective and broad in general. And oftentimes people are like, well, I feel good. My sex drive is good. I'm thinking well. Business is doing well. Oh, but Huberman and Peter Attia said to do this thing. And then I listened to Dr. Rhonda Patrick. And then I heard this podcast from Joe Rogan. And then I saw these different things on social media. And now it's like manipulating the headspace where you're like, oh, I'm not doing enough. I need to take these supplements. I need to do this protocol. I need to do this thing in order to optimize my health biomarkers to be a badass or a high performer in the world. And I agree with you, which is like, hey, what can I eliminate? Not necessarily what can I add, because we already have so much shit in our day-to-day lives. But it's like, how do you kind of tinker and play with that psychology where like the world is trying to play with this marketing schism and this strategy of like, do this, do this, do this, buy this, buy that. Here's how we optimize hormones and this, that, and the other. And you're trying to simplify that approach, kind of put it through like maybe a pasta strainer or something like that to try to like get rid of the excess, to be like, hey, what are the nuts and bolts and like the non-negotiables, as am I. But there's so much convoluted information and knowledge that it kind of gets lost in translation. I'm curious how you kind of create this psychological buy-in and trust with people in the midst of chaos.
if someone's listening to oftentimes when someone comes and signs up for coaching, they've listened to the podcast, read the books, they're still struggling and can't and are kind of dealing with that overwhelm that you're explaining. And so for me, we got to eliminate those inputs because they're all distracting you and creating a lot of that. And no knowledge is powerful without implementation. And so they need to take action towards some of the ones that they think are going to be most beneficial for them. I definitely have opinions on what I think might be most beneficial, but if they're intrinsically excited to buy a sauna and go into the sauna every night, great, go for it. If I might not tell them that that's what they have to do or need to do, um, but it can be led by the things that they're most interested in achieving to solve their own goals. Um,
I literally had to write that down just now so I wouldn't forget because it's been a huge topic of conversation recently, which is no knowledge is power without implementation. We're not in a knowledge deficit right now. You can DuckDuckGo, you can hop on Google, you can hop on ChatGPT, you can watch podcasts, you can read the research. Knowledge isn't the problem right now. It's an influx of knowledge, too much, steering things in the right or the wrong direction. But most people are like, hey, I know. But the most dangerous thing in the world, dude, is having the knowledge and not taking the action. Life's not going to change unless you take the action. And oftentimes, I mean, we look at this, which is where I want to steer mine of your conversation next, into this mental health challenge. And it's like typically you don't change your mental health based on a thought or an idea or just talk therapy. You change it through action. You get a cortisone shift or a cortisol shift. You get, some sort of oxytocin in connection with your tribe members. I mean, just the beauty of a hug. I mean, we need roughly 8 hugs a day in order to maximize, our human dopamine and connection with other people. Tribal culture is fucking lost, dude. People think they're more connected than ever before on this little pocket computer that sits in our day-to-day world, but in reality it's like we're very disconnected. I mean, you and I can walk through some sort of downtown area and everybody's like this. And they're sitting next to a family member, a friend, or a significant other, and it's like they're not even talking to each other. They're playing on their phones. And I really do think that that's like this huge problem. And so for you, man, like what are your thoughts as to how to like solve this connectivity issue? Because I mean, I'm thankful for it in some ways because you and I can connect like this, where you're in Colorado and I'm in California, and we can powwow and it's an amazing tool. But then sometimes the people that are right next to us we're not connecting with. What's your thought on some of that?
I'm I would ask why you're not connecting with that person. Why don't you? Do you not have the skills to connect with them? Do you not want to connect with them?
Mm-hmm.
What is it that's going on? And often the phone, it's just so easy to gain like cheap dopamine from that
Yeah.
and cheap kind of connection. But it's not enough to fill up that primal desire that we all really have. And so, yes, you can see your friends, you can talk with them, you can FaceTime them, but there is something different with giving them a hug or seeing them in person or seeing their face or gaining that eye contact in real life. And so, if anyone's struggling with that, what are the activities that do fill you up with being around other people? And what's that cadence for you? And then start like scheduling that out, just like you'd schedule your workouts. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I have clients that say, okay, I need 3 times to hang out with my friends for about 2 hours each or 45 minutes each or whatever it may be. Let's run that for a week, see how that feels, and then adjust it as needed. Because everyone's different in terms of how much they need to get their fill with other people.
Yeah, and what I'm hearing there too is the things that get scheduled are the things that get done. And sometimes getting like a big ass calendar, to echo Jesse Itzler, I think it's beautiful because it's like right in front of your lenses. Like when you hide it into like a Google Calendar on your phone, you can't see it all the time. So sometimes if things get skipped or missed, it's just like, we'll bury that. It's not in front of my headspace or my psychology. But when you have the big ass calendar on the wall and like your roommate, your friends, your family, your significant others, your partners, whatever, see like, hey, we did the thing. Let's put an X on that calendar. Hey, why is there an X missing here? Like, I had a low moment. Like I wasn't as disciplined that day. We missed the thing. And I don't know, something about like that let line. And if people get nothing from this podcast other than, hey, the things that get scheduled are the things that get done, I think it's a great tool to add in their toolbox.
Yeah. I mean, as we got to put friction in, right? Because there's so many of those external distractions. So Yeah, you cannot do it even if you write it down, but you're giving yourself a better chance of doing that. And I think one thing I wanted to touch on, you mentioned before, was if you watch all these podcasts and know all of this knowledge and someone's talking to you and you say, yeah, I know, but you don't do it, you're essentially lying to yourself and you're breaking that relationship with yourself. It's the opposite of loving yourself. And so after a while, if you ingest all of this info and the action doesn't equate to the things that you're ingesting, those are lots of mini lies that get built up over time. And what that I believe does is it dampens the intuition that you can have of the things that you truly do want and the
Mhm.
energy and life force you do want to bring into the world. And so I encourage people to be extremely mindful of those inputs. And then if you hear something that you like, stop the video, stop the podcast, stop reading the book, go do that thing as soon as possible, actually see if it works for you or not. And then you can come back to the book. But the struggle is that it's very intoxicating to hear those same things over and over again from this podcast A and podcast B and podcast C. Because it almost is like when you're that middle schooler and you're at the cool kids table and like you're listening to all those kids that are saying those same things and you feel a part of that community, which is the number one fear that we all have as human beings, deep rooted down, is being ostracized from the tribe. And so we're really fighting against that biology, um, but it's hurting us in the long run if we don't do that.
The Trident family taught me something really important this last year, that we are all a bundle of stories, both good, bad, and everything in between. All of their cold brews remind their customers that they are part of something bigger than themselves. I start my day with the sweet cream cold brew as I am prepping my mind and body for fitness, service, coaching, and podcasting. With various locations in San Diego, they offer over 14 nitro cold brews and a variety of specialty drinks. You can find the perfect brew and pair it with one of their treats from the Keto Bakery. You can check them out over at tridentcoffee.com and use code ALLSMITH to take your coffee experience to the next level. Yeah, very well said, man. Like it's one of those things of I pause for a moment because I'm trying to create a metaphorical analogy that's digestible for people. But what comes to mind is, you have that one friend that's like, hey, Mike, I'm going to be at your house at 6 p.m. And, we're going to do a meditation and then we'll go for a run and then we'll do, some sauna therapy. Then we can do a debrief or we can, grill some steaks around that debrief. Unexplained expectations are premeditated resentments. If he says to you, hey, I'm going to be there at 6 p.m., but he shows up at 7, the first time you're like, you know what, life happens. It's cool. I'll make it work. The second time you're like, okay, I'll have some grace. But then he just becomes the late guy, right? And like I've been guilty of this in my past. So I'm also speaking into existence things that I'm also trying to improve in a public forum. So I'm trying to like dust and polish the external boundaries of things where I've struggled. But also like for you, when we do that to ourselves, hey, I'm going to work out on a Monday. Never miss a Monday. That creates the momentum for the week. That's a huge thing as part of the ALLSMITH culture. But then you miss a Monday. You have whatever excuse. You have whatever thing. Now the standard that you're like, hey, hold the fucking standard. The standard's changed. And I think what happens is when you're trying to trust a friend, you're like, you know what? I can move on from that friend. That person's not for me. I can't trust them. They never show up on time. Their words, their actions never align. You can relate that to business partners. You can relate that to pages that you follow. All these different external things. But Mike, then we fucking do it to ourselves. We can't escape ourselves. And I'm not saying you do this or I do this, but it's like we make promises to ourselves and then we don't execute them. And then what happens is we start to point the finger and we're mad at the world. We're mad at other people. We're mad at our boss. We're mad at politics. in reality, we overpromised and underdelivered to ourselves. And I think both of us have been through the ringer enough times, mentally, physically, and emotionally, to be like, hey, I don't know who's always going to be there for me, but I'm going to be there for me. We've both overcome the lonely chapter. We've talked about that, in other conversations before. The lonely chapter starts with us. If you don't respect you, how are you supposed to respect other people? So within your coaching, I know you understand that being a man is it's so much more than what you know or how much money you make or this, that. It comes down to like, do you do what you say you're going to do? Do your words and your actions align? How do you integrate that into your coaching as far as a human, as far as a man, as far as a leader? Because, Mike, those conversations don't feel good when you talk to somebody. You're like, hey, bro, you said you were going to do this thing. You didn't do it. You've done that time and time again. And here I am to draw a line in the sand to be like, if you want these things over here, this needs to change. And the bottleneck is actually you. And I've been there before. It doesn't feel good. And I revisit that once a month. I'm like, okay, I've gotten a little better in some things, but then in these other things, I'm still struggling. How have you navigated that as far as being a leader, but also being relatable, but simultaneously drawing that line in the sand and not compromising on the standard that you're trying to hold for yourself and your clients?
Slowly. Build that slowly, because the expectations that we have, you know, in this digital age of comparing ourselves with everyone else, is we want to be the top as fast as possible.
That high hanging fruit, let's go get it.
Exactly. Believe me, I like doing that stuff too. I love running 100-mile races, trying to do world records. Like, I like going there, but I don't go there in the beginning. It builds to that place. So I have a lot of deposits in those smaller inputs, adding up to something larger over time. And a lot of people have that in something. Like, even if you're, struggle with alcoholism, you have a path. You didn't just start there. Like, you grew into that path. And so you can grow out of that path the same, a very similar way that you grew into it. And that could be for anything that you're really struggling with. But you want to start, or what encourage people to do is hit those small commitments that they can keep. And so trying to not make a commitment that you can't keep. um, and I think it's hard. That's why my business exists. A large part of it is accountability, to help people with conversations. Like, a very common um, tool that we'll use will be holding people accountable to difficult conversations. So if they have resentments built up with a friend or a family member or a colleague, um, oftentimes we make those so much bigger in our heads. And when you can articulate it with your coach, he's like, external to that. He's not as emotionally invested in it. So you can say, oh, maybe an apology. Do you think an apology would work here? Oh, yeah, cool. Do you feel comfortable apologizing? Nah, fuck this guy. He's this. Okay, is that hurting you or is that hurting him? It's hurting me. Do you want to keep hurting yourself, or do you want to be stronger and, maybe practice an apology? Okay, I can apologize. Great. When can you do that? This week. Cool. What day? Friday. What time? Where can you do it? Do you need practice writing it out? I'll often write things out that I want to say that are difficult for me to say, because in that moment, when I'm sitting at the water cooler in the cubicle, and my boss is there, my friend's there, and I want to have the conversation, it's kind of hard to just like broach that. And so, hey man, I got something I'd like to talk to you about. Can we go out for a walk? Then I go outside. He's like, yeah, sure. What's up? We go outside. I pull out the paper. I say, this is important to me that I share this with you. And I had to write it down because I'm struggling with how to communicate my feelings. I just want to read it to you. If anyone does that to you, you're immediately going to be like, wow, this is important. This person really cares. They took the time to do this. I'm going to listen. And then most often that creates a stronger relationship because you're leading with that vulnerability and that connection. And so there's many different tools to do all of this. But again, start small with things that you can commit to and let that grow over time, and setting your expectations appropriately.
Yeah. That's so raw and it's so real because, like, oftentimes you don't want to have like a script. because it feels like the world's going to judge you for that. But in reality, you like sit with that and you observe and you're like, man, if somebody took the time to write this out and process their emotions, like you and I both know the things that hold most people back are the stories that we tell ourselves. And the most successful people in the world are typically comfortable having those uncomfortable conversations. But we create this story in our head of like, how are they going to react? Am I going to misspeak? Or all the different worrisome problems that may or may not actually happen. And as a byproduct, it creates like space and a buffer from us actually broaching that thing. But I'm curious your thoughts here, Mike, around I think transitions in the world are some of the most like beautiful things. I mean, you could look at a men's or a woman's body and like the beauty is within the transitions. You think about like CrossFit culture and you think about like, well, it's not always the fittest that win. It's those that can transition the most efficient from the thruster to the toe to bar to the ring muscle up. Like, how do they chalk up? How do they get their grips? How do they drop? How do they go to the next station? You think about some of these ultra races and some of the support group that you've had, like digestion becomes a big issue in some of these things. How do I use the restroom? How do I get my fuel in? How do I get my hydration in? How much do I sleep or not sleep? There's so many factors that go into this, and it's as simple as the word transitions. And you think like, oh, this experience took place. It created this trigger or this reaction. It either did or did not align with the outcome. Here's the want that I want. How do we get there? And how do we create an ambiance or an environment where everybody wins? And sometimes it's exactly what you said, having that uncomfortable conversation. But so many people ruminate based on the story that they told themselves, and they're like battling guilt and shame, or they had this reaction or that reaction, not realizing that half the fucking time it's because they're tired, they're hungry, or they made this mistake or that mistake. What are your thoughts on like how do you coach people around like deconstruction of ego? Because it's like, I mean, I just had an experience yesterday where like I misspoke, I was tired, I was mad at myself, and then I was like beating myself up as far as guilt and shame. But this took place in the matter of like 10 fucking minutes. And I was like, oh, this actually isn't his or her fault. It's actually my fault. Let me just grab the bull by the horn. Let me take ownership for it. Let me apologize. Let me explain my headspace and my thought process. And now we can move forward. We can learn from it. But oftentimes these experiences get drawn out for days, weeks, months, because most people are not willing to look themselves in the mirror and take ownership and have ego deconstruction. It's like whether that's an intimate relationship, a personal relationship, performance relationship, or even relationship with self. If you're unwilling to do that, you sit there and you ruminate in the fucking rat race like this for so long when it's like, man, you could just use this as a data point. You can blame yourself, learn from it, and then fast forward your acceleration towards improvement into the future by just being like, hey, this is on me. I don't have anybody else to blame. It doesn't feel good, but when you have that courage and the willingness to be like, hey, it's on me, you can fast forward your success rate by tenfold. And I don't understand why like people are unwilling to do that because it's like a life cheat code.
Well, it's one of my favorite books. I often have people read it, Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. Like,
Yep.
if you don't, it's one of the first topics we talk about in the first week of coaching is taking ownership over your life. And
Mm.
they've already shown it by investing in the coaching. Like they are have a growth mindset. They are owning, that they want to improve. Um, and what I'll often ask people is like, do you expect to be perfect all the time? And no one says yes, I should be perfect forever, because they realize that that's impossible, and you have to miss some shots to make the appropriate balance. And
Mhm.
even that word balance, I don't always prescribe to. I like the word rebalance, because nothing is ever perfectly balanced. Like, I like to do a lot of handstands. So when I'm in a handstand, I am constantly falling one way or the other, and I'm just making these small adjustments very fast to look like I'm staying up. But if you looked at my hand or you looked at my belly button, you'd see like the little breathing in the core and the pushing with the fingers, and it's just constantly going ta, 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 back and forth. And it's the same thing with our life. Like, we want to stay in a balance, in our flow, whatever that means. And the more strength or tools you have mentally, emotionally, physically, you can stay in your spot. And then understanding, okay, you're going to push it too far in these certain areas, especially if you're wanting to grow, especially if you're an entrepreneur, especially if you're pushing the boundaries of your life. But like you mentioned, that is the space that you get stronger in. Like I talk about emotional fitness a lot. I lead a men's group at my house where we go around in a circle and everyone gets 2 to 4 minutes to practice talking about feelings from their past month. I hand out a sheet with 50 different feelings on it. And, growing up, I had three main emotions: happy, mad, and sad. And so if I was frustrated, that would go into the mad category, and I never be able to properly communicate with the person my frustration. I would just get mad at them, and then we'd have a fight, and then sometimes our friendship would stop. And it was only because I didn't have the emotional skills or the fitness to express that. And just like physical fitness, it's uncomfortable. Like you might even get sore the next day, like emotionally, like, oh my gosh, that was a lot to listen to everyone and speak myself. But again, just like in the gym, you get stronger the more you practice it, and it becomes easier. And so um, I think like having those different ranges of emotions and understanding, what you're feeling and viewing it as a practice, and that's not going to be perfect and no one on earth is perfect, can help take a lot of pressure off.
Very well said. I'm really good friends with Carl Paoli, and I think he coined early on within the fitness space that phrase or that term, emotional fitness. And he and I talked a lot about it because he was the OG dude that was doing all the. I mean, he had gymnasticswad.com.
I
He
remember
was,
his book free. I didn't know he talked about emotional fitness, but that's great.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
I have his book Freestyle.
yeah. He's got a great book. He does freestyle connection seminars, and he and I've gone to dinner a few times, and I just loved just the ideology around different types of fitness because it resonated with me and my community around not just emotional fitness and physical fitness, financial fitness, playful fitness, right? Like these are all the different buckets or hypothetically the spokes in the wheel. And Mike, I mean, you and I can attest to this. The wheel only has those revolutions when all the spokes are relatively pretty strong. Bro, I had physical fitness for 34 years. I didn't have emotional fitness. I didn't have financial fitness. I didn't have playful fitness or sleep fitness or food fitness. It was like, dude, put the ball in a hoop and go try to compete at the CrossFit games. And like, you've done the thing. And I could relate that to so many different people. Like, as far as like they find their specialty, they find their niche, and all of a sudden that becomes their identity. I mean, how many times have you and I gone to a holiday party and they're like, "Hey, Mike, what do you do now?" And they identify what you do with who you are as a human being. You're like, no, I'm Mike Aidala. Like some days I'm a strength athlete, some days I'm an endurance athlete, but more importantly, I'm a leader. I'm a playful explorer in the world. I've cultivated a tribe of high performing individuals where we have in depth conversation and we talk about movement and mindset and investing and playful architecture and family and all these different flavors of the human experience. I mean, how boring is it if you just ate ground turkey every day? That's just having physical fitness. But then all of a sudden you add sauces, you add spices, you add the different textures and cultures of food, and you're like, whoa, there's some vibrance here, and like my human experience is improving. And I think you're kind of like you exemplify that in your everyday life. You're integrating all of these things into your world, but it's not all about being a human doing. Sometimes it's about being a human being and practicing the art of stillness. And the reason why this is floating to the surface is because our mutual friend Bickle and I talked about that in depth. I mean, he's done an amazing job in the fitness culture. He's cultivated Bickle Consulting, one of the highest grossing marijuana consulting businesses in the world. He's like, Bryce, I'm great at movement. I'm great at doing. He was like, I've really struggled in the last year with being. And so, what I'm curious about with you, Mike, is how do you create space for stillness, self assessment, self inquiry in a world obsessed with doing and performance?
I think maybe like Bickle shared, like he sees that that's a struggle for him and that's an area he wants to improve. That right there is a goal. that creates the motivation. Now he can spend some of his valuable asset, his time, going towards that and finding the appropriate outlet to do it. I'm
Mm-hmm.
a big proponent of nature based psychotherapy, spending time in wild places, just natural places. Like if you live in New York City in Central Park, and it doesn't need to be every single day for hours a day, but once a week, going for sitting underneath a tree and just observing the natural things around you allows your brain and your nervous system to slow down. There's this concept called attention residue, which means
Mm.
that every time you task switch from one thing to the next, you leave a little bit of your attention over at that thing. And so if you wake up in the morning and you sit down to work and you get a notification for an email, you go answer that email, then you come back to some deep work that you want to focus on. Maybe you left 5% at the email and now you're at 95%. Then you get a text. That's another 10, that's another 5%. Now you're at 90. Very quickly before your day gets really going, if you have your notifications on or you have an open door or whatever it may be, you can be in the negative. And now you're trying to use mental grit, willpower, to caffeine, whatever it may be, to gain some of that focus back. And so giving your brain a break in nature by ingesting natural things is very healing on a soulful level. Um, and I think it's something that I would encourage someone who wants to develop a deeper relationship with themselves to do. Um, Now, the hard part of that is there's no scoreboard. And so being able to take a journal and after your experience reflect on it will help you see the progress and like reinforce that that was time well spent in a world full of human doings.
Mm-hmm. That hits the nail so hard for me, man, because it's just one of those things where, like you said, there's no scoreboard. Like, what's the measurable? How do you create the buy-in, not just for yourself, but for the consumer, for the client? How does this become a sale? And I know for me, my mom passed away on July 23rd, and I brought on a healer slash consultant for myself for an ALLSMITH collective, and we worked together for, I don't know, like 12 weeks straight. And then I took 4 weeks off to kind of reallocate my time, attention, and energy into something else. And I was like, whoa, I'm different without him. We can talk through things. We can navigate things. He calls me out on my bullshit. We steer the ship in the right direction. It's not just about me. It's about my team. It's about so many different facets and variables and the integration of breathing and sound healing and faith and just like this whole cohort of tools and methodologies and ideations that I've been like, whoa, this dude is a huge part of everything. And you don't really realize something's missing until it's gone. It's not always measurable. What are your thoughts on that within the human experience? Because I don't know, Mike, that I've created the appropriate language around that. Because I really do believe that, I might be speaking a little bit in the clouds here, but like language is a made up construct. It is in some shape or form hieroglyphics that we assign value to. And based on tone, eye contact, body language, there's accents or decelerated or different accents. Based on how fast somebody speaks, you might pick up on some sort of anxiety. Based on how slow somebody speaks, you might pick up on some sort of depression. But in the truly curious sense, because I do highly respect you as an artist and a man and an explorer and a thought leader within the world, there's something to the human experience that we can't quite quantify with the word, right? Like there's you and there's me and there's some sort of energetic cord, but we haven't really crossed paths that much in person. But there's this love and respect and just something cool there. You feel it, I feel it in different ways, shapes, and forms. But words don't quite depict it in the right way. How do you play with that level of like artistry within the world when it comes to trying your best to describe something within the human experience that words don't exactly do it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, the word that comes to mind is attunement. How well can I
Mm,
attune my, antenna to the world around me? And I think we can all relate to, a situation similar to the one I'll describe is you're sitting in a room facing away from the door, doing something. Someone walks in. They don't say anything, but you can feel the energy, like something's up. I got like something happened, and you turn around and someone is, something did happen. There's something important there. Or someone walks into your gym and there's like a, you just feel the vibe. Something's a little bit off, right? We call it the vibes now, or uh, whatever. And so that is exactly what we're talking about. It's subtle energy between people. And that's happening all the time with different rooms that you're in, with different places that you visit. Like everywhere, as and the more you can attune to all of those things, the better choices you can make for the environments that you want to set yourself up for. And ideally, those environments are ones that are true to you. And so the reason I love nature is because it's the most honest place in the world. Like, a tree is going to grow towards the sun because that's how it gets energy. Animals are going to eat the things that they need to eat to survive. There's no like manipulation games that are really happening. And so when I'm looking for my own truth, I want to put myself in the most truthful place, so I can, clear that antenna as best as possible to direct it towards the things that feel best for me.
man, that's a really good description, man. That was cool. Would you describe yourself as a truth seeker? Is that something that you're in pursuit of as far as the Mike Aidala mission? Is it trying to find this clarity within truth?
Definitely. Yeah, I'm a big proponent of being as honest as possible. And so
Mm.
I want to know what is true for me. And then what actions can I take based on that information and then check back in because I'm evolving all the time. And so
Mhm.
what was true for me at 22 years old is different for me now at 35.
Yeah, totally. Perspective changes for sure, man. When you look at the idea of faith and construct, and why we're all here, where we come from, are we part of a simulation? All the famous questions that come from the conspiracies of the woo woo thoughts. When you're in Joshua Tree, on some psychedelics, and you're just kind of thinking about the human experience. For you, like there's an energy, there's something that you experience on a 100-mile run that not everybody experiences. I know I've not experienced that. The furthest I've run is a marathon. And then there's experiences during psychedelics, there's experiences during, hot and cold therapy, there's experiences and conversations. And then going back to where we kind of started our conversation, deathbed conversations. When you're having conversations that are deep and meaningful with people that you love that are facing their own mortality, along with working out and breathing and knowing what our signs and symptoms are, and just kind of like you said, attunement, or that deep level of intuition to kind of take a pulse on the human experience. And that famous quote that floats to the surface, which is, people forget what you said, they forget what you did, but they never forget the way you made them feel. Mike, from your experience as somebody who I highly respect, why are we here? What comes to mind for you as far as like our goal here faithfully, and what's the role and the system that we're enrolling ourselves in?
I appreciate those kind words, and I don't want to pretend that I know the secrets of the universe
Mhm.
because I don't. But what I do believe is that the more people can live their own truths, the better the world will be, and the most honest truths that they have. And I don't think that, and maybe there's some scientist that knows this, different than me, that people are born evil. Like I think they get taught certain patterns or certain things throughout their life experience, but that's not their deeper truth with how they really are. And most of the people that I'll work with, they're not like they're not serial killers. They're not bad people. They've just gotten
Mhm.
far away from their own truth, and so guiding back towards themselves, helping point that finger towards their own chest, through faith, through spirituality, through whatever tools that there are. I definitely have opinions on the tools I think are most useful and can do that the cleanest and the most direct. One of those would be fasting. Done some 4-day water fasts in wild place, completely solo, where all I
Mm.
was ingesting was the natural world and wilderness around me. And I had tools for initiating certain rituals and ceremonies that then carried with me in the rest of my life. This is some like rite of passage work that has been going on forever in human history, where we move emotionally as from a child to an adolescent to an adult and to an elder. And so we've lost some of those patterns. And I've gotten kind of like pseudo rite of passage through graduations or even like social media or whatever it may be. People gain status, which is another concept we can jump down, like in different types of ways that can almost have them skip that important aspect of emotional maturity, which is going through the shadow, dark, traumatic experiences of life
Hmm.
that we all have. And so the way I was taught was from this rite of passage guide, and we use emotional maturity on a north, south, east, and west graph. And the west is that dark aspect, dark night of the soul thing that we don't go through the west, I'll kind of skip the part there, so I'll backtrack for a second. There's the east, which is where we all start as a child. Then we move to the south, which is adolescence, very ego driven, like social media, me. Think of like a 5-year-old kid. West is that dark night aspect of the soul. North is your true north, like your true meaning and vision for this world, why you were meant to be here. And then back to the east as an elder to pass along maybe some lessons that you've learned. We have a lot of people that skip the west and they just go right north and they live in what I'll call false north, but where they don't truly feel like their life has meaning because they've skipped that work that gives their life meaning.
Hmm.
It's like you have to break things down in order to build them back up stronger in your muscles, in your mindset, and everything else. And you can't truly do it without that type of work. And that the long duration wilderness fasting with just water eliminates the ego because you lose a lot of the energy, you lose a lot of the stories that you're telling yourself. You're confronted with some things, and you have some tools in order to work through those, but depending on how you go about it, I just had a tarp and some clothes. I didn't have a book, a phone, a camera, anything to distract me from myself. And I think the more that people can do that, it doesn't have to be a 4-day wilderness fast. It could be a daily practice. It could be like I was talking about in Central Park, just some sort of personal reflection goes so far in understanding, at least for yourself, why is your life important and why are you on this earth?
I like that a lot, man. Strip it all away and see what stays. And something about a relationship with nature just brings us back in the observation of sunshine and the elements and the different animals that are out there and how they interact. But dude, there's some sort of sequence too that's kind of come to my headspace around, especially in being in business ideation now and looking at spreadsheets and you know P&Fs and looking at, or sorry, P&Ls, profit and loss statements, and looking at all the logistics and the numerical values. Nature does that organically. When you get lost, you just turn to nature, you look at dogs, and you look at children, and they seemingly have it all figured out. And we spend our whole life trying to escape home or the womb to become this adult. And inevitably we crave going back to that space. You look at probably the most important decision of your life, which is picking a life partner. You're craving somebody that feels like home. You're craving somebody you can be real with and have a soul's connection with and conflict resolution with and trying to figure out the peaks and valleys of the human experience. That now diffuses into raising kids, raising a dog, raising a business. That literally translates or trickles down in a rain like effect into everything that you do. And I liked that you simplified it into those terms as far as just truly connecting with nature, man. Like we get lost from that and think that we're going to find the answers underneath artificial light in our cubicle. And like we talked about previously, we're not in information lacking state. We're in information overload. But we don't know how to find the clarity within information and feeling. And some people are so married to their feelings that they make poor decisions, knowing that feelings are like sitting on a park bench. These thoughts are going to come and go, and you just kind of have to let them go and cut that energetic cord, knowing that they don't have like a grasp on us. But then people get so married to logic and they're trying to follow some preconceived thought pattern or some study that was made up by some higher level education piece that was funded by somebody that's just trying to manipulate your psychology. And it's just like there's so many different ways that we can shift and change our lenses that it just comes down to like you have to trust that attunement. You have to trust that intuition. You have to be open and willing to have the hard conversations, be willing to be wrong, and also be willing to tinker in the lab and realize like, oh, this is right, this is wrong based on my experience and the case studies that I've experienced. And for someone like you that's had a ton of life experience, and we've talked a little bit in the last bit of this conversation around presence. Mike, what's something in your life that keeps pulling you out of presence? And how do you bring yourself back when life is like, hey, dude, come over here. I want to like tickle your fancy and distract you over here. And you're like, nah, man, I need to be present on the things at hand.
Say the question one more time. What is it that pulls me away, or how do I come back?
How do you pull you, or what things speak to you that kind of pull you away from presence? And then what strategies do you use to then come back when you've lost your way?
A lot of the strategies that I talk about, that I've talked about today, right? Like I teach a lot of things that I've gone through and that are helpful for me. So like I used to be the biggest shooter in the world, always worrying about the right thing to do. And I remember Googling when I was young, like how to go out on a first date, what to wear on a first date, and constantly looking out for this information. And then I would show up on a date and be like, almost trying to be very performative of what I thought was the right thing to do. And
Mm.
that pulled me away from develop the opportunity to develop a deeper relationship. So if I'm feeling myself getting pulled outside of my buckets, my values, I try and just remind myself and look at my schedule, like you mentioned before, and say, okay, if I'm feeling off, it's probably because I'm spending time outside of those buckets. So, how can I eliminate the things that are pulling me out and schedule in some things that are? And the schedule is important because it's easier to let ourselves down, but it's harder to let other people down. So if I'm not having a lot of friend time, I will text my friend and say, "Hey, I'm coming to work out. Hey, let's go on a bike ride. Hey, let's do this," um, and be proactive with setting that plan. Because of course I could cancel it, but again, that's putting in a little friction point that makes it a little bit harder to do that. And so getting like taking the time to really focus on the things that are most important to you and you eliminate those external distractions, let your brain, let your system recover from all of those external inputs so you can have that attunement towards your own truth. And then taking small actions towards that is going to be the key. And I can't emphasize that enough. The smaller the actions are still so valuable because they lead to those bigger things over time. And so often people want it all right in the beginning, like we chatted about, but they then stop themselves from actually being able to achieve it.
I mean, when you look across 365 days, it's a lot easier to stand on the ground and grab the low hanging apple consistently over the course of time. If you're constantly going after the apple that's at the top of the tree, it's like you might need a rope, you might need a ladder, might need a boost, you might need to figure out how to climb the tree. Now, there's friction in the pursuit. And you and I've talked about that a little bit offline as far as like maximizing sales and connection and some of those things like click friction. If you have to click more than 3 times, you're probably losing the sale. And so minimizing the friction to maximize the value that's added to the individual, I think is a huge priority system as far as creating compliance. Because I mean, you think about like eating quality food, which is something you talk a lot with your clients about. If you have food prep already prepared in the fridge, people are more likely to have that because they're hungry and they're hungry now, as opposed to, oh man, I got to cook that thing, or I got to go to the grocery store. Fuck it, I'm just going to order Uber Eats and I'm going to get that thing that has additives and ingredients that are outside of the norm. And, that works for some, that doesn't work for everybody. And so minimizing that friction, like you said, is a key contributor to the long-term success. But something that I'm curious about also is you talked a lot about community. Something that brought us together is that element of community with the Eric Hinmans, with the Bickles, with the Ties, with some of these different people that are within the Denver fitness community that are out there. Bo being another one from V23 Athletics. For you, Mike, what is the role of community in healing and performance? And what are you most intentional about building a community of your own with your brand, The Offense?
I mean, communities goes into that quality time with friends and family bucket. So it's definitely important to me. Quality time is one that the word quality is what I often focus on, because I love to, and I take on a lot of energy when I'm with people. I really invest a lot into them and love being as present as possible. And so my personal appetite for that is different. Obviously, everyone's is unique to themselves. And so when I'm thinking about building community, I want to be doing things that I love with people who love those things too. If we need to want to make some compromises, we can, but the best way for me to have the opportunities to do those things is by articulating what is it that I enjoy and inviting people along in that process. That's really like a key thing I talk a lot about with people who are, will say, hey, you have this great community. I don't have any community. How do I build it? I say,
Mm-hmm.
well, start doing really fun things that you love and then bringing people along to do those things as well. And if you're enthusiastic about it and you enjoy it, they might enjoy it as well. Versus always kind of pointing that finger towards someone else. Like, take some of that ownership, some of that leadership in the community that you want to develop through some passions that you have. And that could literally be anything. It's just having the courage to onboard people with that process. Like, I mean, I'll want to cook something and like want to do some live fire cooking thing. And I'll reach out to some friends and be like, hey, I watched this video, or I came up with this idea, or I read this book about this guy, Francis Mallman, who does this outdoor cooking stuff. And it's super cool. Do you want to come over and we'll bake some steaks and dig some holes in the ground and try and cook some, vegetables in the dirt. And some of my friends are like, I never even thought about that, but cool, I'm down. Like, let's give it a try. And from all of that, now we're learning this thing together. We're sharing it. We're building, again, that community versus just like feeling like I need to just check the box by having people over to my house to do things that like I don't truly enjoy.
I like that because now you're pairing what you're already going to do and the passion that you exude in those things with an external community that either has experienced that or they're experiencing it for the first time. It's a version of paying it forward, or it's a version of, finding ways to grow and evolve the current existence of what you're doing. When you look at burnout culture, man, like, you're running a business, you're trying to grow a family and a relationship, you're trying to grow the offense, you're trying to be innovative, like you're running payroll. Like there's so many different variables and factors that don't get shown on social media that not everybody understands. How do you minimize like burnout culture as far as when to say no? Um, if you are inviting people into your space to do, sauna cold plunge at nighttime, or if you're doing a little retreat or a powwow, or if you're going to Hinman's over at Muscle Mountain, you guys are doing just kind of a little powwow. What's the process like of like integrating an action plan for that? Is it, throw into a group text of like, hey, at this time, at this place, here's what's going down, and creating upfront expectations? What is it like to say no to certain things? And like for somebody that's maybe looking to cultivate that level of community, and using their strong expertise and their passions to share with the local community or even turn it into a business. How do you mitigate some of those friction points?
Mm, I'm not sure I quite understand. Like mitigate the friction points of starting it.
Yeah, I mean, you think about it and it's like, okay, your work schedule is probably different than Eric's work schedule. You might have a call at this time and he might have a call that runs later. You each have significant others. You each have roles and responsibilities associated with travel. And then we have, the Bickles, we have the Bows, we have the Ties. Everybody's on a different schedule. Is it within a group text that you guys are like, hey, Wednesday at 7:30 p.m. we're going to do some sauna, some ice, some breath work, and then, have a nice meal together at 9 p.m. Or, how do you guys cultivate the planning experience of some of those things? Because for someone like me, I get hiccuped in the details where it's like I have access to a lot of these tools and I want to share them with all my friends. But it's like, man, I work till 8:30 at nighttime. And I'm always trying to cultivate the best experience possible and have an open invite. But sometimes I get lost in the translation or the weeds of the planning experience. And I'm sure there's other people out there that are just like me. And so I'm curious how you guys kind of manage the details.
Yeah. So two things. One, definitely we have a group text, and that group text gets out to anyone that could be interested in it. So there's people added to it all the time. It's a very long text.
Nice.
And there are also some consistencies. Like we're working out every morning at a gym at 9:15, and so if you want to come work out, come work out. Like that's a time to hang out. And it's so structured in that I know I'm not going to call Eric and ask him for coffee at 10 a.m. because I know he's doing clean and jerks or he's doing muscle ups or whatever at that time. And that boundary that he has creates comfort for me to know when I am going to be able to hang out with him. And so I know I can mountain bike with him at 2 o'clock. I know I can sauna and cold plunge and eat steaks with him at night. Um, and so if I want to hang out with him at those moments, I can do that. And if I want to invite him up to me, I can do it at those times too. And I think the idea of boundaries is so important because it creates a lot of structure and safety for people. And often I used to hate the word boundaries. I wanted like everything to be possible, but that creates so much overwhelm. And so
Yeah.
the analogy I'll use with you as a basketball player is if you never heard of basketball before, and we take 8 of our other buddies who have also never heard of basketball, and I bring you to a concrete slab and give you a basketball and there's no lines on the court or no goals and I say play, like we're not going to necessarily have a great time because anything is possible. So we might kick the ball around, throw it at each other, not really sure, and not going to have a good engagement, building, having fun. But now if I come and I put a shit ton of restrictions, right? I put lines on the court, I separate us into teams, I put up a goal, I put someone to enforce the rules that I've put in you. You get penalized if you break the rules. I've just put in a ton of boundaries or a ton of restrictions. But within all of those, now we can play. Now we understand what's allowed or what's not allowed. And so for people building their own communities or wanting to do that, know the game that you're wanting to play, know the things that you love to do. And like the simplest way of saying this, and I said it before, is do something that you love doing and just invite people to do it with you,
Mm-hmm.
period. Like I get a text from Eric all the time, hey, I'm going mountain biking at this time at this place, you want to come? And most of the time I can't make it, but I say thanks for inviting me, can't make it, let me know next time. And I will do that with other people. Hey, working out at this time, this is what I'm doing. Let me know if you want to come. Like, and I'm not married to to if they come or not. There is that men's group that I host at my house monthly, and that's free. It's open to any guy in the community that wants to practice emotional fitness. I smoke a bunch of meat, like 30 pounds of meat, and we all come out and sit in my backyard. And so that's a great opportunity for people to come there. But I'm not married if one guy or 30 guys or 40 guys come. Like, it's nice to get a heads up so I know how much food to get. But I've just put that into the things that I value and the time that I have. Because for me, it would lead to a lot of burnout if every single day I had like deep, emotional, heavy conversations with people.
Yeah.
If I have all of that at like a couple times, that is I have the fitness for that.
Free is the way to be. Life beats us up a bit and causes some bumps and bruises, but that doesn't mean we have to stay on the sidelines. This is why we've partnered with Kinyan Labs. Get back to doing what you love with this incredible portable device designed to get you back in the game. Kinyan is on a mission to move people from pain to possible with their top-rated red light therapy and laser solution, which tackles inflammation along with muscle and joint pain quickly and effectively. What I love is that it's portable and rechargeable, making it easy to actually incorporate into my everyday life consistently. It's small and lightweight, so you can throw it in your gym bag or work bag or even an overnighter. Kinyan's lasers and LED combo make this cutting-edge device extremely versatile for use with general aches and pains, as well as chronic back pain, arthritis, post-surgery recovery, endometriosis, and more. This has been an amazing tool keeping my elbows and knees pain-free for pressing, pulling, and squatting in the gym. Great tools like the Move Plus give me the freedom and flexibility to continue living life on my terms without limitations. There are a lot of reasons why over 15,000 people are using this device and rating it 4.7 stars and above. Head on over to kinyan.io and use code ALLSMITH at checkout to begin your pain-free journey. No, it's cool the way you described that you're not married to the expectations that you place on others. It's like, hey, I'm going to create space. If you want to come participate and play within the Mike Aidala sandbox, you're welcome to. But inevitably, I'm going to do this anyway. And it's a cool place to share and deliver value. If you can't make it this time, here are the expectations. It sounds to me it's not just boundaries with others, but it's also boundaries with self, which then allow you to then participate within, for lack of a better word, the game of the rules that you've created, which is previously like if there are no rules, they're just a collective of people. They're doing a clusterfuck of something that doesn't really have a rhyme, a rhythm, or a direction. And so creating that direction, the boundaries allows for active participation, but also a cognitive and a time frame where people don't feel like they have to play forever. It's like, I know when I go to the gym, like having a power hour is almost more valuable than having 2 hours to play, because you actually get shit done as opposed to like dragging and bleeding things out in different directions.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I mean, again, it's so personal for everyone what it is that they enjoy, and that's where I keep harping on the same concept of like knowing what it is that you really like and practicing exploring that. Like, I'm trying to think of people that are listening to me saying this and what they might think, and I'm hearing a lot of the similar conversations that I'll have with clients, which is like one of the first questions on my questionnaire is, "What's your relationship with fun and play?" And more often than
Dude,
not,
I love that so much. I have to highlight that. That's fucking
like
dope.
more often than not, they're like, I have no fucking idea what that is. Like I have
Yeah.
had fun or played it forever. I'm like, well then
Mm-hmm.
what's the point of all of these things that you're trying to do? Do you want to have
Mm-hmm.
more of that? And most of the time they'll say, yes, of course, I want more fun and more play. I'm like, great.
Mm-hmm.
What do you like to do for fun and for play? Watch movies, go out to dinner. I'm like, does that really feel fun for you? Not really. I don't actually know how to have fun. Like, I don't know how to play. Cool. Do you want to work on it? Yeah. Great. Then they can start practicing allowing themselves to move in towards that type of energetic space.
Mm-hmm.
But so often, like we get siloed into these like serious adult roles and start to lose that childlike wonder or enjoyment for aspects of our lives. And so it takes a ton of what you said before, curiosity, which takes a ton of courage to allow yourself to try something new and put
Mm-hmm.
yourself in that beginner's mindset. Um, and it's hard work. And that's where, I can help, hold someone accountable to going to a new class, to reaching out to someone new, to asking a guy out on a friend date. Like those are hard things, but if you're held accountable to them, you'll do them. And it was oftentimes like 99%. I'm gonna say 100% because I've never had a 1% that didn't go well. Those conversations go well. Like, yeah, man, I'd love to get acai bowls after this workout. Sick. I can't make it today, but let's do it on Thursday. Cool. Bam, new friendship happens. That could lead to business partnership. It could lead to so many things, but it's all rooted in that fun and that curiosity and that courage.
It's the white belt mentality, right? Like have the courage to be a beginner in something new. And also, if you don't ask, the answer is always no. And definitely aligns with that Eric Hinman concept, which is so freaking cool. But he always talks to me about his goal of meeting one new person a day. I just think that's so cool because it sounds easy. It's freaking hard. That's 365 new people a year,
Well,
and
I'm
you have
gonna.
no idea.
I-
Like,
I've I've known Eric for a while, and is extremely strong in many areas of his life, and this is one that he's very strong in. He is a
yeah,
very strong connector with people, and like
yeah,
for me, meeting one new person a day would be exhausting at the moment.
yeah,
So like that is an amazing goal, and one that he's very strong in, which is great, and it like helps him and the way that he can connect with people and his business and all of these things really well. But it definitely helps build that community because he rarely says no. Like he's very open and um, to his partner Sarah's support, like he's very inviting with people over to his space and into his ecosystem, and
yeah.
all of the time he's inviting them to do the things that he loves to do, and he's just sharing it
Hmm.
with you, which is
You and I
intoxicating.
became
It's
friends
fun.
around like the just before the pandemic a little bit, and I've tried to cultivate like a fraction of what he's done at the house with the sauna, the ice, the cooking, the fireside chats, and my version of Muscle Mountain. And like you, man, like I can crush it for 2 or 3 weeks, and then all of a sudden I'm like, man, I'm feeling kind of burnt out. Like I need some personal time. I need to recharge. I need to plug in that iPhone to kind of reset, recalibrate, and get back out. But it's like that dude is just going nonstop, and he's in his 40s now, and he's just all gas, no brakes. And it's very impressive, man. He gives me somebody to strive towards, being and wanting. And I think it's very, very cool what he's doing. And he's not just saying it, he's living it. And he's actualizing the part, which I think is so cool.
He totally is. I mean, I've known him for 8 years. Been one of my best friends for a long time.
Hmm.
He is what he said, like what he does it all the time. It's
That's
cool.
super cool.
And again, it's like he's just bringing you into the things that he likes to do, which
Yeah.
is so comforting, and it makes it easier for him. Like, I will get exhausted if I'm trying to bring people into things that I don't naturally do. If it's a
Hmm.
should,
Feels
like,
forced.
yeah.
Mike, I wanna riff on a couple things. I'm gonna say a quote. I wrote down some quotes that make me think of you, and I want you to kind of riff on them for 2 to 5 sentences. For each one of these, where we're gonna play in this in kind of like an imam style. So every minute on the minute for our listeners, and these are some things that I think you can provide some great insight, and hopefully people can sit with a pen and paper and kind of get some great tangible value and some actionables that they can add into their life. You ready to rock?
Okay, let's do it. Action, baby.
All right, man. You're not here to be the strongest in the room. You're here to be the most present. Three, two, one, go.
Focusing on the things that you want to be present on will help you be the strongest version of yourself in the room. So, writing down the most important things to you, and maybe even giving yourself a score of how present you are currently, and then reflecting back, making a plan and reflecting back in the next week or the next month on how you did with the plan of presence.
I like that. What are your thoughts on like scoring yourself? How does somebody integrate that process into their life?
I think you need to be clear on what it is that you're scoring, how you're measuring it, and then I think it can be helpful because it gives you again that boundary or that like scoreboard of knowing where you stand.
Yeah. Creates a framework rather than a rule book, which is something that our good friend Ty Moore has talked about a lot. He's like, fuck, dude, I don't want rules. I I want a framework. Give me some boundaries, and then I'm gonna like paint and I'll play within the lines.
That's a basketball analogy, right?
Yeah,
You can run a ton of different plays. You could do a play however you want to play it, but it's within those rules or
yeah,
that framework.
for sure. Real men don't run from their feelings; they lift them. They breathe through them, and they set them down with grace.
I like to think of emotions on a 1 to 10 scale. One is like the darkest emotions that you can have. 10 is the elated, best emotions that you can have, or highest. I won't even say best. So often we want to avoid those one, twos, and threes, and we just want to get those eight, nines, and tens. But if you don't allow yourself to feel the one, twos, and threes, you're also not going to allow yourself to feel the higher ones. And so you wind up living in this like 4, 5, and 6 area where nothing's great and nothing's terrible and everything's kind of okay. And you just
The
go,
land of comfortable complacency.
right. This is a lot. This is the people that we help with the offense. Like 80%, 60%, they want to get to the 100. Now, the best way to do it is stop focusing on the eight, nines, and tens and build the emotional strength to handle the one, twos, and threes. Recognize, like you said, they're going to move through. The more attention and ability that you give to feel them, the faster that they move through. If you try to avoid them, they will start to peak up. They'll start to show up later on. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's almost like if you get broken up with or you go through a breakup, that's an emotional injury, similar to if you like tore your ACL. Now, if you try to distract yourself from those feelings, sleeping with someone else, buying a bunch of stuff, whatever it may be, that would be like you tear your ACL and you just like hop on the other leg and you don't really let it heal and do the work required for it. It's going to start to flare up later on and going to start to be a nagging thing. And it's the same in that emotional realm. If you don't go through that healing process, it's going to come back and bite you in the next relationship and the next one and the next one.
Yeah, man.
That was
That
longer than a minute. So.
that funnels perfectly though into my next little bit, which is you can relate this to the dating world, you can relate this to business, but you know what the greatest emotional flex is? Or the greatest flex in general? It's not big muscles or the fastest time. It's emotional intelligence and a regulated nervous system. The ability to stay even keel when there's chaos going on around you and to be able to think clearly when emotions are volatile. What comes to mind when I think about the greatest flex with you?
The book by Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning. Viktor Frankl was a Auschwitz Holocaust survivor, and in the book he talks about his experience in the concentration camp. And he says, paraphrasing here, but he observed the worst atrocities that you could even think of, that you could imagine. And
Mm-hmm.
he said the people that survived were the ones that could hold on to the only thing that the Nazis couldn't take, which was their perception. And so I often think about that if I'm struggling with something. It's like, whoa, if this guy can handle his perception in Auschwitz, I can handle my perception in Colorado. And I
Mm-hmm.
can kind of reframe some of the stories that I'm telling myself um, towards a more appropriate, conclusion.
Yeah, he's got one of my favorite quotes of all time, which we talk about often, which is between stimulus and response, there's a space. And within that space is our power to choose.
Yeah.
I think it's so beautiful to like pause and kind of highlight that for a moment. Chasing PRs means nothing if you can't sit still with your own thoughts. That's a big one.
I do love chasing PRs, so I won't lie on that one. And I like practicing stillness, and I think there's a cool balance within both of those. But just zoom yourself out of what is the reason that you're chasing PRs, what's the reason that you're wanting a six pack, what's the reason that you want all the money, what's the goal that you think all of those things are going to get you, and then
Mm-hmm.
ask yourself, is this the best way to go for that goal?
Mm,
And that's
I
where
like that one
that's where stillness and presence can help, answer that question.
for sure. It always goes back to Simon Sinek start with why.
Yeah.
Why are you doing what you do? What are you chasing? And, if you get everything you want in the world, you get the PR, you get the money, you get the girl, you get the thing. Okay, then what? Like, is it about the outcome and getting to the top of Everest? or it is about who you become in the process. Are you trying to become the best version of yourself? So when you get to that moment, you're not just accumulating one more thing. You're actually the human that is ready to receive and give within that experience, which I think is a completely separate conversation.
Yeah. Well, like reflecting on what did you learn? That's something I try to ask myself after a race or an event is like, what did I learn from all of the time, effort, energy, money that I spent investing in this thing?
Mm-hmm. There's a famous guy, his name's Henry Rollins. He's been on Rogan quite a few times. I've become a really big fan. Former musician, writer, wrote for Rolling Stone for a really long time. And as far as being just an organic adventure, he's done this really cool thing where he like grabs a map. He like circles a place he's never been before. He's like, hey, I'm going to go there. And then he goes to these different places around the world, and like it's an education process. He learns something and then he brings it back and he integrates it within his writing, within his craft, within his music. And he has a famous quote that is all over gyms all over the world, which is, the world can tell you you're a superstar, the world can tell you you're a fucking bastard, but 200 pounds is always 200 pounds. And so he says healing is heavy, but so is the barbell. Pick both of them up. What comes to mind for you?
I think the barbell is a great tool to learn about yourself. And so there's a lot of struggle. It's extremely honest. You can either pick it up or you can't. You can either lift it in a Turkish get up or you can't. And then from that, what needs to get stronger? I mean, for me in the get up, it was the lunge. Like a dead stop, same arm, same leg lunge was hard. Like my legs are strong, but they're not that strong. And so I had to really
Mhm.
work on that and taking that.
Especially with a vertical torso angle, right? For people that don't understand, keeping that load perpendicular to the floor and not getting a forward torso angle when you've got 200 plus pounds over your head in a single form modality with scapular stability. If you step forward, it's not just the lunge. If that torso angle folds, now the load's folding too. So trying to paint that picture for people to understand, it's more than just a traditional lunge. It's a very vertical torsoed lunge.
Totally. Yeah. You gotta try it. You understand. Um, but that same analogy of breaking it down, you can use with life, with your relationships. Like, what are
Mhm.
the areas in my relationship that I can work on and I can build that strength in? And so I think it's cool when you can take, skill based physical fitness, which is literally all physical fitness, if you have the capacity to tune to the skills of a push up, a pull up, muscle up, get up, whatever it is, to the skills of being in a relationship, communication, listening, curiosity, whatever those are. And then just like I would score myself on, I know I want to work on my lunge, my overhead lunge strength. What are the areas I want to work on in building my relationship or building my business or my community? And then what are the exercises I can do for those?
I can't help but clap at that, man, because where I'm about to take this conversation is going to light your heart on fire a little bit. Do you have fitness or does fitness have you? Being jacked and miserable isn't the freaking goal. Being strong and soft is. What you got with that one?
Yeah, I think I would say just being strong because being soft is strong. And so being strong mentally, emotionally, being able to handle, your kid giving you, you know, talking back to you, like how can you handle your response? All of that is strength. And within like a get up as an example, you have to create tension in your body in certain moments and release tension at other moments. That would
Mm.
be like strength and softness. And so understanding what's the appropriate time in your life to create the tension, how much tension do you need to put, and then can you recover and relax with softness in other areas is similar in the things that you think about when you lay your head down at night. Like, am I making enough money? Do I like, does my partner really love me? Like, whatever those things may be, I'm making them up. um, I think is what's a cool thing of living a strong life.
So interesting how words create either like a positive or negative affect or effect within our psychology, like the word soft immediately is like, I'm not soft, I'm tough. But it's like you need the yin to the yang, the lightness with darkness. You need the strong or the hard with the soft in order to maximize the capacities of like artistry or
Hmm.
human potential or optimism or some sort of like just the total human expression or peak expression that people are after. It can't all be dark rigid lines that are pushed. It's like you need some softness of the clouds and some different color explorations, and it comes with just like the with the ooh, and just like this give and take of push and pull, and there has to be contrast or nothing really has meaning. And I think there's something that comes to mind here that I think you're going to love also that very much relates to what we just discussed. And it's just kind of said in a different way. But you can bench 400 pounds, but can you apologize when you're wrong?
Different types of strength, right? Again, what's the ultimate goal for your life? What are the things that you want to be putting your energy towards? For me, I
Mm.
definitely would prefer to be able to apologize, because that's going to improve my relationships. I
Mm-hmm.
don't. I love the barbell. I enjoy bench pressing, but I'm not married to my barbell or my bench press, and I'm not sleeping on them at night. And I don't want to.
Yeah. Yeah,
Like, I
totally.
want to go through life with my partner, not with my weights. That my weights help build a life that I can enjoy and give me more
Mhm.
capacity to enjoy all of those things. But
For
they're
sure.
not what my life is surrounded by.
For sure. Another one that's really interesting, people think you see this in dating culture, like I need to be more interesting than interested. You see it as far as like loudness on social media, where people argue that the highest form of currency right now is attention and not time. And it's this conversation that's creating a little bit of an uproar that I've seen all over X and threads. But in my opinion, masculinity isn't about how loud you are, but it's how deeply you listen. Can you actually listen? Or are you just waiting for somebody to stop talking so that way you can say what you want to say? I think deep listening in a world that is seemingly connected, but they're really more disconnected than ever before, going back to our cell phone analogy. What are your thoughts about, just relating that to the Andrew Tate psychology of just like, what is masculinity? Is it rah, how loud you are, or is it how deep do you listen?
I think it's how much can Turkish get up. That's the biggest man.
Hey, there he said it. Finally, the truth came out. Flex
You
that
put
ego,
that one
Pavel.
right there.
That's the clip. I was waiting for the clip, man. There it is.
No, I do, of course, think that it is, based on. I forgot the question. I was on too busy with funny joke.
That was so perfect.
Too busy not listening.
Yeah, right. Is masculinity about how loud you are, or is it about how deep you listen?
Hmm. I definitely believe it's your listening, your ability to connect with other people, and obviously you need to connect with yourself first. But going back to what we chatted on in the beginning of the podcast, if you're listening to the TV, if you're listening to so many other inputs, it's hard to then have the capacity to listen to someone else. And so I would encourage people, if you struggle listening to your partner, to your kids, or whatever it is, like, we only have a finite amount of attention a day. And I like to think of it as like a Mortal Kombat character. And every time I spend that attention on something else or on something, it kind of goes down. And at the end of the day, usually when like, kiddos coming home from school, have some time to unwind with my partner, I want to make sure I have some of that budgeted so that I can, invest in the things that are most important, truly most important to me. Um, I'm not sure if did we talk about King, Warrior, Magician, Lover last time?
Just briefly, but let's touch on it again because I remember you speaking on that, and it just really perked my eyebrows a little bit, and I think we can create some more clarity with it now.
Yeah. So when I think about masculinity and like being a man, I really do love that archetypal framework of the king, warrior, the magician, and the lover. And this is a book. as well, called King, Warrior, Magician, Lover. But these are the archetypes of the complete masculine psyche. And so king would be anything related to your finances, taking care of your kingdom, your space, your environment, investments, stuff like that. Warrior would be your physicality. Your someone breaks into your home, you're gonna meet them with that warrior energy. Anything related to your really like your physical health. Magician is your connection to spirituality, faith,
Mm.
something larger than yourself, the mysteries of this experience. And then love, or your lover energy, is your passion, your enthusiasm, your interest in play or fun, or I often think of like a stereotypical like European guy who's like the wine and the cheese and the dancing and like loves life. Like our friend Bickle has a shit ton of lover energy, and so there's shadow aspects of all of these where you can become an addicted lover, for example, where you are too invested in all of those things and get caught up in you know sex addiction or really any type of addiction. Or you could be an impotent lover where you're like, I don't really love anything. Like, I don't care about it's all blah, whatever. And so there's shadow aspects to all of them, but a good rubric, an easy framework that I often think about with myself if I'm having a question of like, what kind of man am I, or am I moving in a right direction with my life, is just like very fast in my head, giving me a scoreboard across all of these. Like,
Mm.
I will invest a lot normally into the warrior mentality. And so I'm like, cool. Like I've gone after the Turkish get up record. I've poured a ton of energy into that. Some of these other things have gone down while I'm building this up. Afterwards, let me like chill on that for a little bit, still work out, but not have as much focus on it, and start to pour energy into some of these other things so I can keep this thing rebalanced. But a thing I'll also mention that I think you'll like, Bryce, is what is the timeline of balance or of your rebalance? Like,
Mm.
do I need to be focusing on all these things weekly, monthly, quarterly, yearly? Like, what is the timeline that I judge myself by? And that's just a curious question I often ask myself and will extend out in terms of this, you know, what's the word I often use? Syllabus for life, or semester, there it is. Like this
Mm.
semester, I'm focusing on this, and the next semester, I might focus on something else. And in the course of a year, I can reflect back and look at all of these different life courses of things I've accomplished and the degrees that I feel like I have. And that feels good and it's fun.
That's cool. King, warrior, magician, lover. Just the four quadrants that people can put time, energy, and attention into to kind of
Mhm.
structure their headspace a little bit. I love that. My last one for you, man. This is something that I think a lot of men experience, and there's a lot of tethering in relation to career, production. A big question that comes up in our men's work with ALLSMITH is, are you loved for who you are? Are you loved for your function? And so the final one for you, Mike, is you're not broken. You're not depressed. You're not anxious. You just get disconnected from your breath, your truth, and your heart. And I think that very much relates to listening. It's not just listening to the external, it's listening to your heart's whisper. What do you want? What do you need? Where are you putting time, energy, and attention into? And are you missing it for you?
I think if someone's been listening to this podcast till now, I think they're gonna have a good idea of what I'm about to say. Because I agree 100% with you. Like being able to listen to your heart and that whisper is difficult, and it doesn't come, I believe, as naturally or as timely as we always want. Stephen Pressfield talks about the muse in like our creativity and setting up structures and times to invite that into your space where the light bulb moments can kind of happen. And
Mm.
so that is something I would recommend if someone wants to develop their own truth, is to develop a disciplined practice of creating space for that to arrive. again, I would suggest it being nature, because that is the most honest place there. And you're not going to maybe go out into the woods and sit down for 30 minutes and look out and into the trees and like get your life's meaning or your life's purpose. But if you do that every week, 52 weeks out of the year, you're gonna give yourself a lot of chances to have some reoccurring themes come up and to start proving to yourself, oh wait, that whisper is getting a little bit louder. Maybe I can really trust this thing that continues to show up in my life. How can I gain that courage, or do I already have the courage to take action towards that whisper? Um, and when that whisper comes up, letting it speak as loudly as possible.
Mm-hmm. I love that, man. Something that's coming to mind for me is, we all want like certainty and guarantees. I mean, one of the hardest parts of the global pandemic in and around COVID was FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Like most of us want some sort of guarantee that life is going to be the way it's going to be, and we're going to have this income and this health insurance, or we're going to go to this place and we're going to do the thing. But the only guarantee is change and management of uncertainty, and association with the hard conversations, and allowing yourself to have this stack of evidence and proof of concept that you're going to be okay no matter what the circumstances is really what leads to emotional management and success, really in any field, not just entrepreneurship. And the word that comes to mind there is just stacking small, honest moments, not just achievements. And that's kind of how I define success. And so my thought for you is like, what's a small daily moment that allows Mike Aidala to stay grounded in some of those uncertain moments?
I'm gonna challenge that for a second. I don't think people want certainty. I think that they want the strength and the capacity to deal with uncertainty because that's going to happen. Life is going to change, like you mentioned. And
Mm-hmm.
if someone is wanting to, what I would say, play defense, right? My company is the offense where we take action towards moving the ball forward
Yep.
versus certainty, which would be like sitting back on defense and reacting to things that are happening, letting someone else drive that car. You get you become offensive by having more skills and more capacity to drive the car in different directions, to learn how to shift, to learn how to use your blinkers, to learn how to move and manipulate the your body system the way that you want to manipulate it. And so
Mm,
if you're sitting there thinking, yes, I do want certainty, what if it was, yeah, I want more capacity to handle uncertainty?
mm. I love that. I think you and I think that way. I think our friend group thinks that way. If I were to observe the world, I don't think the totality of the world thinks that way. I think a lot of the world develops this victim mentality of, the government's doing this, or, my job's doing that. And when you look at like our education system, a lot of people are enrolled in, hey, if I just go to school and I memorize the material and I get a good grade on the test, like it's going to lead to the outcome that I want. But you and I both know in entrepreneurship, the A students traditionally work for the C students. And it's because the C students do exactly what you just did, which is, hey, I challenge that. I go against the norm. I think outside the box. I don't color within the lines all the time. I want to understand the whys, the hows, and the ifs and the buts. What are your thoughts on that? Like, I think that you're totally correct. Like, if we could get everybody to think offensive and try their best to control the variables, it's great. But up until now, I don't know that everybody thinks that way. I think the majority of people think more reactive. I mean, look at just the heaviness of the world. Is monetization more towards big pharma and reactive medicine as far as, hey, you're fucked up, you are obese? Like most people right now, Mike, are going to lean towards Ozempic and taking the pill versus what you and I both want, which is, hey, let's optimize lifestyle. Let's get you in sunlight. Let's do things that don't have the risks of Ozempic and big pharma. And so, like, although my heart and my mind agree with you, I'm also like, I don't think the majority of the world thinks that way. I want them to. And I'm on this mission with you. But I'm like, fuck, man, like, I think more of the world is defensive than offensive. How do we get more people offensive?
That's what I'm trying to do, man. Yeah, 100%. That's why I created my company, and that's why I'm on this podcast. Like that's why I want to get that message out there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it comes down to giving people the tools to be offensive in their own life. A lot of
Yeah.
the tools we've talked about today, and all of
Mm-hmm.
these tools, they probably, hopefully, at least sound good, make sense, but they're not going to mean anything unless you apply them. And
Yeah.
so, like going back, giving another example of the values is if you have those 5 buckets, audit yourself. Look at how much time you're spending daily outside of those buckets, and what's one action that you can do to eliminate one of those things.
Mm-hmm.
And how can you hold yourself accountable to it? I talk about this a lot at different workshops that I'll lead. I'll have people partner up. I'll have them exchange phone numbers. I'll have them set a time to meet the next week where they're
Hmm.
holding each other accountable to something that they're eliminating. Um,
That's cool.
and before you want to add anything in, you have to create that space and take it out. It's not as fun, it's not as sexy, but it's what works.
No, totally, man. It's I'm so in alignment with what you're doing, and I think now having like a really deep dive into the offense and the mission, the values, the ethos, I freaking love it, man. And I love that we got to that point in the conversation organically where we got to push back and play within the challenge system because it's like, I mean, especially looking at basketball, I loved playing offense, man. You get to kind of pick apart the weight distribution of what somebody's doing. You get them to lean and play a certain way. I get to tinker with angles and like get people reacting to my fake shots, my fake passes, and kind of just like it's poetry in motion. And I think something about that is so beautiful when you develop that level of control within your life and being open to the fact that you're not in control of everything. You can't just have this predetermined thought of like, oh, I'm going to make this move and then I'm going to get a bucket. It's like you have to have a counter move. If the defense does take that skill away, okay, what's your counter move? What's your counter to the counter? What's your counter to the counter to the counter? And that's the adaptability and the framework that I think you're creating, which is not this rigid, predetermined, I want my expectations to match everything robotic culture. It's like allowing yourself to have flow, to harmonize within the relationship between masculinity and femininity, the light with the dark, the yin with the yang, and the push and pull between expectations and also understanding the role of gratitude, right? Like a famous quote from Tony Robbins: when you exchange expectation for appreciation, your world changes forever. And it's like, oh, you cut me off there. How grateful am I? Because I get to practice this new move that I just learned. Oh, you cut me off there. Cool. Now I'm going to do it again. And it's this constant flowing adaptability that we see in surfers, we see in yoga, we see it in sport, that gets a little bit rigid in the framework of human ideology that wants the 10-step protocol or the 3 steps they picked up from a podcast that they can implement right now to make $1 million and remove all their pain. Little do they know that it's not really about the $1 million. It's about who you become in the pursuit of the $1 million.
I think it's the mission,
Yes.
especially men. Like we want a mission, want something, a dragon to slay, a thing that we truly believe in and focus on. I know
Mm-hmm.
that if you don't have that, you're going to look towards the 10-step thing because you're thinking that that is going to give you a framework, a morning routine, a mission for your life. But it's like those things are definitely helpful for sure. Like it's helpful to develop some like, you know, basic, not basic health routines. And if you have a mission that you care about so much, a lot of that stuff falls into place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very well said, man. So many people want the thing, and then when they don't get the thing, they abolish the mission. And they're like, oh, it worked in the first 3 months, but it's like, yeah, dude, like going from nothing to something is going to work every single time.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't really matter. But being married to the loyalty and the constant contribution, even when you're getting 0.05% improvement over that original 1% improvement or the 10% improvement, it doesn't always like tickle the headspace as far as like moving the needle in the right direction. But as you know, in touching on our concept of PRs, like fitness is the doorway. It's about who you become as you walk through this life's journey that becomes the real story. And the PRs are metaphors for the small micro improvements that you're making in your day-to-day actions.
Totally. I love it. Emotional PRs. Trying to focus on when those are happening and celebrating them like you celebrate a fitness PR.
Dope, man. My final construct that I want to just kind of play ping pong in your headspace is a little bit, just because you mentioned extreme ownership with Jocko Willink. I've done some cool things with him. He came out and did some workouts with our community associated with Jocko Fuel. And big fan of that guy. Cool to see his growth and development. Cool to see his business evolution with Jocko Fuel and what he's done kind of in the broad and inclusive fitness space. But he's got that famous quote like discipline equals freedom. And it sounds cliche to say something like that on a podcast. Like people hold on to that and like, oh, great, discipline equals freedom. But it's like we talked a lot about it's not just the knowing, it's the action that comes on the other side. And so to me, like discipline's not a punishment. It's actually a love letter that you write to your future self. What are you doing behind closed doors when nobody is watching so that you can be ready when the opportunity presents itself? What comes to mind for you, Mike?
I mean, I just will snap my fingers and agree with you because that's so true. Like, and those are the small investments that no one sees, and you're not going to get a bunch of appreciation externally for. But over time, those internal investments and they help breed true confidence that then helps you take that action towards the larger things that you want to accomplish. So I love that. I mean, it is a gift. Discipline's a gift. It doesn't always feel like that, but it sets you up in a way to give yourself the opportunity to work on things that at the end of the day, we all truly want more of, which is to believe in ourselves, to love ourselves more.
Totally, man. Your ability to communicate, your ability to share unapologetic vulnerability with us in the midst of a 255-pound world record Turkish getup, which I believe went viral all over social media. I had everybody talking about it, which congratulations, man. That's a huge accomplishment, let alone just like a Turkish getup in and of itself is very difficult. While simultaneously being an ultra runner, man, involving yourself in the Leadville races, which your first attempt last time we spoke didn't go according to plan. And the
Mhm.
courage and the wherewithal and the vulnerability to kind of get back to the drawing board, reset, recalibrate, and then put yourself out there vulnerably, not just in the run, but the bike, and accomplishing those things. And, now having goals and aspirations in the future to hit the numerical time domains that align with your goals as a human being. The community that you've created out there in Denver, man, between Bickle, Eric Hinman, Bo, Ty Morris, and other names that I'm not mentioning here. Like you're a jack of all trades, man. And it's been very cool to follow your journey and realize like you're not just this high performing, toxically masculine dude. Like you understand emotional intelligence. You're paying it forward in the realm of mental health and love and care. The way you speak to it is really cool with your brand, The Offense. And I loved hearing the ideology that you were so willing to share with us today. Mike, was there anything that we didn't touch on today that you'd really like to share, or, a thought process that is maybe a guiding light within your day to day?
Nothing's coming to mind, man. I do definitely want to thank you for having me on and sharing all those kind words. And um, I will take a moment to just say if you do live in Denver and you're looking for a community, probably by the time this comes out, be very soon to opening up a fitness facility, a strength-based small group fitness called the Physical Culture Club. We'll be on Instagram at the Physical Culture Club. And if you're looking for a community of like-minded and like-hearted people who want to live a life of strength, I invite you to come and join us.
That's dope, man. I really love the word invite. I think inviting people to be active participants is such a cool phrasing, just because it's an open doorway. It's a bridge between like, hey, here you're here now, and here's where you'd like to go, and let's play powwow with some like-minded individuals and connect. Because outside of high school sports, college sports, maybe a church setting, the access to community is actually really hard as an adult. Meeting new people is very difficult. unless you put yourself vulnerably in the position to meet new people, whether it's a church culture or a community group or some sort of like collective. And so I love that you're creating a home base and a hub for people to come out and actively participate into the mental, physical, and emotional elements of strength to pursue their peak expression. It's pretty cool, Mike.
I appreciate that, and I agree with you, and that's why I want to create a physical space that's open for anyone who wants to again live a life of strength and become stronger in all these different ways. I know it can be intimidating to join any new space, or I get even intimidated to walk into new gyms.
Mm-hmm.
But this is going to be for the everyday person again who wants to get stronger. Where we might be doing some Turkish get-ups, but we're doing a lot of classic strength and conditioning work that will be adaptable to people of all levels.
I love it, man. Well, thank you for a peek behind the curtain. Thank you for your time, your energy, and all the different lessons that you shared with our audience and our ALLSMITH community today. Hopefully, they listened to this or watched on YouTube with a pen and paper and can get some really great value that they can add into their life. Guys, for those of you observing or listening to my conversation with the legendary Mike Aidala, please rate, review, subscribe, and as always, stay on the hunt for who you've not yet become. Until next time, thanks for tuning in to ALLSMITH.